Now we're going to take a look on how to remove the lower shaft. It might be necessary for us to remove the lower shaft if it is frozen, if we can't turn the hand wheel, or maybe if a timing gear or the feed lift cam needs to be replaced. Check both shafts always before just removing a particular one. You can see the lower shaft runs along the bottom from the left to the right, and it holds our feed lift cam, feed cam, and timing gear. Also at the very right hand side there is a belt, and the belt wraps around the bottom part of the black gear that is on the lower shaft. Follow the belt up and you can see it runs from the upper shaft to the lower shaft, and it is held in with pressure and tension by an idler unit. To loosen the idler unit or to remove it, go through the right hand side of the machine and locate the screw and just loosen it. Once you have loosened that idler unit, you can remove it from the machine. Now we have a little bit of slack on the timing belt that runs from the upper shaft to the lower shaft. Next, in preparation of removing the lower shaft, we need to remove the machine socket. The machine socket has 3 screws. When taking out these screws, be careful. You do not want to put too much pressure against the plastic part of the machine socket unit because you could crack it. And if you did crack it, then the machine socket unit would be slightly loose when the panels are on, and it would have a little bit of wobble to it, which is not good. After removing the 2 screws, turn the machine around to the rear and remove the 3rd and final screw. Once you have removed the screw, you can see that the machine socket is now loose. That is as far as we have to go. We do not have to remove the wires. As long as it is loose on the machine and where we can move it around, we will be fine. Turn the machine over and view from the bottom. The lower shaft has to come out to the right. That is why we loosen the machine socket unit. This way it does not crack into it and it can go right past it. Now the machine is a little wobbly when standing on its head, so to make it a little bit easier, take a screwdriver or some kind of tool and place it underneath, so this way it will not wobble and fall over on you. Now we have a black collar on the left and we have a black collar on the inside. We have our lower shaft timing gear, which has 2 2.5mm screws, and we have a Phillips head screw in our feed cam. Not only that, but if we move our feed lift cam to the right, we can see that there is a pin underneath it. In order to move the shaft to the right, we first must take out this pin. Next, we're going to grab our 2mm hex driver, and we're going to have to loosen the 2 2mm screws which is on that left collar. Just loosen the screws slightly, and once you have them loosened, use a 2.5 hex driver, place it into the timing gear to help hold the lower shaft, and you can start to wiggle or to move the black collar off the left of the lower shaft. Take off the felt piece, followed by the 2 white washers. Next, on the other black collar, we're just going to loosen the other 2 2mm screws. Now we're going to loosen, using our 2.5 hex driver, 2.5mm screws on the lower shaft timing gear. Now we're going to remove the small Phillips head screw which is inside our feed cam. Now that we have loosened or taken out the screws and the pin, you can see that the lower shaft is loose. There is still some prep work that we can do to help us remove the lower shaft very easily. Where the hex screws used to be, they left scar marks on the lower shaft. You can take a file and you can start to file down those scar marks. You only want to file down the scar marks. There's no need to start filing down the whole lower shaft all the way around the circumference of it. Just the scar marks is good enough. You know that you filed it down enough when you can take the black collar and you can slide it on and off easily. Now, before we start to remove the lower shaft, we have the timing belt, which goes around the bottom black gear. Take a small flathead screwdriver and slide the timing belt off of the black gear. Now, to start to remove the lower shaft, support it well, and grab your hammer, and you're going to hit it directly onto the lower shaft. Do not hit down on it or on an angle. As you start to move it through, if it is a little tough, remember, there are other scar marks that are on it. Once it has made flush with the bushing, use a blunt tool to use as a guide. So as you can hit the lower shaft through the machine, this tool will go through too as an extension of your hammer. As you start to hit it through, if there is anything tight or preventing you from hitting it nicely, take a look at everything first. Make sure that nothing is in the way that you could possibly snap off. If you need to, try to loosen up the collars and move them a little bit to try to free them from the scar marks. Take your tool again and use it as an extension. Start to hit the screwdriver in, using it as a guide. Double check to make sure everything's alright, and if everything is moving smoothly. Continue to hit the screwdriver in. Now when hitting the screwdriver, always make sure that you line it up in the middle of the shaft. If it's slipping off to the edge, that's not good. It's going to scar up the edge and make it very hard for you to remove. Now the screwdriver can only go in so far. You can see that it's acting as a guide. It's holding the other black collar, your white feed lift cam, the spring, and the timing gear. Try to start to pull the lower shaft out. If it is still a little bit tight, give it another little tap. Now, the lower shaft is tight because it does have scar marks on it, so it might be a little hard to pull out. Now that you have removed the lower shaft, you can inspect it. If need be, you can put a new one in. You can leave your screwdriver in there and act as a guide, especially for the feed cam because there's a spring underneath it. This will help hold it in place, so when you put the new one in, or the old lower shaft in, it'll be very easy for you.